This is Dr. Robert Balfanz from the Everyone Graduates Center and the Grad Partnership, and I'm here today to give you an introduction to student success systems. Current student support efforts are not sufficient for the pandemic-impacted world, and that's why we really are creating this idea of student success systems. Here are some reasons why what we have is not enough for the challenges we currently face. The student support systems we currently have arose over the past 20 years, each in response to a specific need, which has left us with a fragmented system. So we developed early warning and on-track systems to really work on dropout prevention and raise graduation rates. We introduced PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention Systems, as an alternative to sort of zero tolerance policies and a way to have a more proactive way to improve behavior. RTI became MTSS and was really about initially reducing the number of kids that got special education referral, and then became a general strategy for sort of providing academic support. After ESSA in 2015, many schools where chronic absenteeism became a performance or a accountability indicator in 35 states, many schools formed attendance teams. Along the way, we also beefed up our sort of college readiness and counseling supports, and may well have added in the past decade a health and wellness team. All of these teams have purpose and utility and do good work, but what happens is they end up having multiple meetings, often talking about the same student, but only one dimension of their need. That can lead to a lot of meetings and a lot of frustration because each meeting is only working with a small piece of a holistic challenge. In addition, the current scale and scope of our student needs post-pandemic has really expanded, in fact, maybe exploded. Chronic absenteeism doubled. Many schools reported great gains in behavioral challenges and student mental health needs. We all understand the large learning gaps that were caused because of the pandemic. And altogether, this has slowed momentum through high school to post-secondary. Recently, there was data showing that for the class of 2024, there is a 5% decline among all students enrolling in college right away, and a 10% decline among students that live lower income students. Our pre-pandemic student support systems were just not designed for this scale and scope of current needs. Systems were designed for maybe helping 50 kids, now have 250 kids in need of support. So how then do we create student supports that are strong enough for pandemic impacted times? Well, a couple of things we have to keep in mind. One, unfortunately, there will be protracted impacts of the pandemic. If we follow kids over time, we see that many of them that experience the pandemic in later elementary school or early middle school are just now getting to high school, for example. So for example, the class of 2027, which is still 3 years away, those are the kids that really experienced the pandemic in 6th grade. And you can see that's a critical transition year, we know, for high school graduation and post-secondary success. And those kids yet are still working their way through our system. So unfortunately, these pandemic impacts are going to be with us for a while. The other thing to keep in mind is we've had big advances in the past decade in brain science and youth development. It shows that the adolescent brain is still changing and developing, and many self-control and self-motivation strategies are undeveloped in the teenage years. At the very time, we're counting on kids, in some of our current approaches to student supports to figure it out for themselves. One example of an area of where there's been sort of advances of learnings sort of after a lot of those student success efforts got put in place is school connectedness. We're really learning, and this was really driven home when we sort of lost this during the pandemic, that when students are connected to school, they do better in school, they have better mental and physical health, they engage in risky behaviors. And because of this, it's as close as we have to universal prevention action. And the good news is that we can really operationalize connecting kids to schools in schools, and we can actually measure it, right? Because we know kids are connected to school and 4 things are true. They believe there's an adult who knows and cares about them as a person. They have a supportive peer group, could be formal, sports team, theater crew, robotics club, or informal, a circle of friends. They engage in activities they see as helping others, and they feel welcome in school for who they are. So we sort of put this together. We have greater need than our systems can currently account. Our current systems are fragmented. They often talk about the same kid, but at one aspect at a time, leading to great frustration. And we knew we needed stronger systems for these post-pandemic times. So we thought the best way to do this was actually to talk to the people doing the work. So we talked to over 300 educators, teachers, counselors, principals, superintendents, and others, and really just asked them in depth, what's working in your student supports? Where is more help needed? What things do you think are really needed to be added to make these systems work in the times we live in now? And that really led to this idea of a student success system, which is a way to organize a school community to help address both school-wide achievement and school culture issues, increase that school connectedness we talked about and a sense of belonging, and also to meet individual student needs. And to do that, it combines a focus on strong relationships with real-time, actionable, holistic data, which result in strategic improvement actions and are shaped by student-centered mindsets. That's a mouthful, and we're going to dig into that in depth right now. We can start with a picture, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So this really puts those ideas together in a visual way, right? We connect supporting relationships to actionable data, supported by student-centered mindsets, which enables us to take improvement actions, which importantly are co-created with teachers, students, families, and communities, because there's a lot of wisdom there that we sometimes rush past and our eagerness to find a quick solution to student needs. When we put all this together, it creates student success systems with a goal of enabling all students to thrive. And the key thing we heard from those teachers and counselors, and is critical to understand about student success systems, is they're not designed to be a new thing. They didn't want new things. They wanted their existing things to work better and to fill in missing pieces. So student success systems are designed to do that. And they really build upon existing efforts with early warning, on track, MTSS, PBIS. We really tell schools, find your strongest student support team and build up and out from that to create a student success team. All right, let's go into these components, because again, I said it seems like a lot, but as we walk through it, you can see how it all comes together in a mutually reinforcing way that's quite doable and implementable in the schools we have as they are now with the student needs we face at the current moment. All right, so the foundational element, and this was really driven loud and clear by the teachers on the ground, is we have to put more upfront focus in building strong relationships all around. That's really what got fragmented in the pandemic and didn't just bounce back by itself. So we need good relationships between adults and students, between students and other students, between adults in the building, and between adults and parents and caregivers. And we really need that to work, at multiple levels. And it really depends on having this school culture of belonging where everyone feels validated, accepted, affirmed, and treated fairly. That's like the foundation of creating those strong relationships. Once we have that as a baseline, and really the idea is like you should do that first, because that will help reduce the number of students that need additional supports. We know we need to have this idea of both holistic and real-time and actionable data. Now, in a way, most schools now are awash in data. And it's often the idea they're data rich, but data integration poor, which means they have lots of data points, but they don't have clear and simple ways of bringing them all together to give them holistic looks that are actionable and don't require lots of clicks to get there, right? So we know the elements of this holistic real-time actionable data, which is it needs to include this idea of predictive indicators, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, things that have been shown by research to be cases where kids are waving their hands saying, I need some help now, and if I don't get it now, things are only going to get worse. We also need to pull in insights from students, teachers, school staff, family caregivers, as they have the most immediate and complete knowledge about what's going on and what's challenging students and what might work to help them. And we need to really include beyond academic and attendance measures and behavior measures, sort of those traditional indicators, information about well-being, belonging, and connectedness and experience in their classrooms, because that gives us that rich relationship, foundational sense of connection which, as we said, we can actually measure, monitor, and improve. And we need this data to be continuously available and as real time as possible throughout the school year. We need it to be available at the student level, but also that we can aggregate it up and look at like classrooms and grades and teachers. And it needs to be things that school and district people can act upon, right? You know, it is informative sometimes to know if a student, comes from a lower income situation, you know, or if they've had certain background characteristics. But those aren't necessarily immediately actionable, right? They may inform us about why something is happening, but we need data that lets us say, this is something we can act upon. And if we do successfully, we'll see that data change. Right. And a good way to think about this real-time actionable data is the two ABCs, right? So the traditional research-based predictive indicators really proven again and again in early warning and on-track work are attendance, behavior, and course performance, right? In order to succeed in school, you have to be there on a regular basis. When you're in school, you have to be able to focus in class and get your work done. And to be able to like succeed in the course in itself, you've got to, make sure your assignments are done. You have to pass your tests. You have to do the things to earn a decent grade in that class. So it's not surprising when students are not there on a regular basis, where they're not able to focus, when they're not able to get their work done, that they struggle academically and then often behaviorally or social emotionally, and each could sort of influence the other into a downward spiral. In addition to what we've learned over the pre-pandemic, but really driven home by the pandemic, is there's the second set of ABCs that often actually drive that first set of ABCs. And the second set of ABCs can often be thought of a broader sense of well-being, which is agency, belonging, and connectedness. Agency is that you have some control over your fate, over what happens. You're just not, you don't have to be passively subject to what others tell you has to happen or how you have to do something. Belonging is a sense that you feel a part of the enterprise of school. You don't feel as an outsider or an other. And connectedness means like that deeper sense we said, that you feel that people know and care about you as a person at multiple levels. And you feel welcome for who you are. And the key thing we try to really drive home is that not only are those all good sort of prevention activities, but they really drive, in many ways, attendance, behavior, and course performance. So they can be thought of as sort of the first almost, group of interventions to do if you're trying to improve attendance, behavior, course performance, is to make sure and increase your student sense of agency, belonging, and connectedness. And the point is, and we'll get into more detail later and in more advanced courses or trainings about how that can be done and how it can be measured. All right. So now we've done our good work to build relationships. We have our actionable data for the two ABCs. And now we got to do something with it, right? The whole idea of student success systems building out of early warning and on track is we want to be able to help students sooner rather than later, proactively instead of reactively, preventively instead of remedially, right? So to do that, we've got to use data and insights to progress monitor all students, not just assuming, oh, there's some students we don't have to worry about. We're only going to worry about this group of students we know ahead of time we think we should worry about. But what the pandemic has taught us is that all kids were impacted, and in sort of ways that are still dynamic. They could be fine now and not later, right? So we really got to keep our eye on everybody. We have to look for patterns and trends, because at the scale of student need we have now, we cannot individualize our way out of the challenge. We can't create a customized solution if we have 250, 300, 400 kids that are signaling a need for help, or even 100 kids in many cases. And that's the thing we have to relearn, because many of our other systems for student support quite quickly go to individualized level solutions. And that can be very powerful, and it's still very much needed. But we have to balance that with looking for patterns and trends and places where we can help groups of students at a classroom level, at a grade level, at the school level, as well as individuals. And that's where patterns and trends matter, as well as sort of underlying causes. And we find, and think about these solutions, right? We got to get lots of insights, and they need to be sort of student-centered and adapted to the local context. And then it's important that we evaluate them. Are they working, right? And that's a step we often don't take, and we'll go a little more deeper into that later. Okay. Right. As I said, critical to this sort of analysis, response, and improvement system is looking for that strategic point of intervention. And it's also important that we support our teams, our student success teams, which we'll explore also in a minute, with professional learning frameworks or protocols that really helps them stay, focus in on this pattern and trend analysis and not get drawn into that where our heart takes us. Let's all work together for the most neediest student we can all think of. We need to do that, but we need to balance that with how can we help larger numbers of students in strategic ways. And the other thing we really heard loud and clear from our teachers and counselors is for this all to work, for this all to have staying power, for all us to move from a new to normal practice in schools, which is the goal, we have to develop a shared set of mindsets amongst the adults doing the work. It can't be seen as a compliance thing or a task to do. There has to be a common understanding of the why. And to understand also, this will take time. This is going to be the longest and slowest part of the process. We begin from where we are, we build to where we need to go. But it really happens through dialogue, reflection, and experiences. We can't mandate people to have mindsets. Right? And just a few we want to really highlight that are sort of beyond those that many of us know well are essential to a student-centered perspective, which is we need to have a belief in educator and student agency, really thinking that students and educators can find solutions to the challenges that are making it hard for kids to be in school every day, hard to focus, hard to get their work done, and not falling back that this is an insolvable problem. A belief that good outcomes can be attained for all, and we don't have to go right to triage and say we can help some and hope for the others. We've got to really have a strategy that lets us help all kids. We have to know this is really about improving with and together and not alone. So much of student support work ends up being solo work. When we have those many, many teams, a behavior team, an attendance team, a well-being team, in reality, in many of our schools, that ends up being a 1 or 2 person team, or a specialist, the counselor, the mental health worker, the psychologist. And they end up having caseloads of 150 or 200 kids that they are mightily trying with all their might to help. But it's just too many kids for a single person to deal with. And it just ends up being that it becomes a frustrating experience for all around. So it really has to be that with and together. And then finally, that we act on evidence and a shared understanding rather than compliance or custom. And again, because of the stress and scarcity under which so much of our schools operate, it is a normal human thing to fall back on compliance and custom. It gives you a short grammar of how to get things done when you don't have a lot of resources and you have limited time. But the heart of student success systems is it has to be driven by evidence and a shared understanding, and not just done because that's the way we've done it before. Because if we're honest, the way we've done it before has left a lot of kids without the help they need. All right. That's a good overview of really what student success work is about, what the student success framework is, the core components of student success, and how it builds on prior work with early warning and on track. Where I really want to sort of leave us at the end of this introduction is with this idea that student success systems are driven by student success teams. And as we're working with schools to sort of get these systems going, or schools themselves are doing it, using the tools and resources that are available, or working with one of the grad partnerships technical assistance partners, really what you're doing is creating the student success team, which is the engine and air traffic controller of this work in the school. So that's why we're going to dig into that in this last part of our introduction. All right. So a student success team is a group of adults who work together on a regular basis to implement, continually improve, and use a student success system. It's a school community effort. It's not just about a couple of people that are tasked as specialists. It includes school leaders. It has to include teachers, counselors, other student support members, and we'll see there are going to be other additions. But it really is bringing together school leaders and school teachers and student support staff and personnel to work as a collective student success team. And the idea is, instead of having all those individual meetings, you have one big student success team meeting with more people that looks at kids holistically and covers the aspects that those teams in the past covered individually. That's why it doesn't necessarily lead to more work. It leads to better and more integrated and ultimately more effective work. So to do this, what our team does is they progress monitor all students with these key indicators, both those ABCs, right? Attendance, behavior, course performance, agency, belonging, connectedness. And they're looking for their patterns and trends and figuring out, what's our focus for right now? What's our high impact focus? And then they gather insights from the students, from teachers, from others to understand what's driving this and what some of the best solutions might be. And again, this is an area of big learning, because in the past, most student support systems, On Track, Early Warning, MTSS, it's usually the adults driving it are the ones coming up with the initial solutions. And they often come up with great ideas. But these are complex problems, and and a high degree of variability and sort of changing based on time and place. And it's a mistake if we start building up rapidly just a few default strategies. If kids are absent, we always do this. If kids are not focusing, we always do this. We got to really think about what's driving that and what is the best solution. And that involves listening to more people, the students themselves, their parents. And then, a way to think about this is, if we just rush ahead ourselves and try to implement a solution, and ultimately it was the wrong solution, at best, we've wasted time. At worst, we might have made it worse because we misdiagnosed the reason this was happening, and our solution actually, made those circumstances worse. So taking just those few little more time to listen to a few more people can actually make us much more efficient and effective in the long run. Once we've done that, we take actions. And again, we're really trying to think about, where is that strategic? Is it the individual level, the small group, the classroom, the school? We're largely trying to create conditions under which students thrive rather than waiting for a severe challenge to happen. And then finally, we have to evaluate and moderate the impact as needed. And as I said, that's often the one where we're like, well, we did all of this. We have to rush to get to our work and to our other tasks. Let's go do it. And then a few weeks later, you're like, what did we decide to do? And no one's exactly sure. So that was an overview. And we're now going to go a little deeper into each one of these. Next. The first thing is just about the team itself. As we said, it needs to include school leaders, counselors, student support, and teachers. In larger schools, these are often organized as grade level teams, a 9th grade student success team, a 10th grade, or a 6th grade team in a big middle school, a 7th grade team. In smaller schools, they can be a school-wide team. They can be the middle school student success team or the high school student success team. It's really about just the size and number of students that team has to be dealing with, and the size of the school for how many adults there are that can participate. That lets you decide, is this a grade level? Is this a small learning community? Is this a school level? However it's organized, they need to have a regularly scheduled time to work together during the school day, and at least on a bi-weekly basis. This has to be seen as really important work, not something that's done before or after school for those that can do it. When they come together, they have to have this easy access to timely data. Again, 1 or 2 clicks at the most. We can't be saying, here's 3 different data sources. You're going to have to work through them and find a way to put them on a spreadsheet and organize it and then figure out your patterns and trends. That will never happen. We've got to figure out a way to get that actionable data to their fingertips. And fortunately, a growing number of tools and student information systems are able to provide that. The team needs this means to gather insights from students and families. Again, not every student, not every meeting, but there's got to be some sort of process for when they can bring in some students to talk to them about their challenges, or they can have a way to dialogue with families electronically or other means. The team needs to have some roles and responsibilities and protocols and tools to help it move along. It's got to be empowered to take some actions based on what it's finding, right? It's not going to work if they do all this work, come up with a great idea, and someone says, I don't think so, right? That's why leadership has to be involved and the team has to feel empowered to be able to try out the solutions, which all their work tells them is the best thing they can do in the moment to really help more students. And then they need those shared set of norms to support continual reflection and improvement. All right, let's go a little deeper into those 4 buckets, right? First of all, progress monitor all students. We're really trying to identify students and really groups of students who need additional support as soon as there's a signal that something's changed and the circumstances have changed, motivations have changed, and they need some help now. Instead of waiting until it's crystal clear that anyone can see it. And that's really how our student support systems historically have been organized, especially in middle and high school. We don't do anything until you're chronically absent, or really in the past truant, and then we say maybe we'll send you to court. We didn't do anything until you failed a course. Then we often said do it again under the same circumstances. Or we didn't, do anything about engagement or focus in class until like we're suspending you. So we're really trying to get way ahead of those motions and say, maybe you failed a quiz last week. That doesn't normally happen. Or maybe suddenly you missed 3 days of school when usually you're here every day. Or there was that incident with some students yesterday that seemed uncharacteristic. That's the signals we're looking for to say what's going on, what needs to happen. It might be a really small thing. It might be a passing thing. That's fine to know. Or it may be a signal that some more, without intervention, it's just going to grow and grow. We need to add those well-being indicators in, like school connectedness and belonging, along with our more academic and traditional ones. And we really need to look how they're co-occurring, right? How many students that are struggling in math and English class are also chronically absent? That's the type of data we need at our fingertips and always need to be asking. And maybe even the next question beyond that, how many kids are failing math who are either chronically absent or feel disengaged from schooling, right? Because maybe that will give us the subset of kids where it's truly only an academic issue. But for those 2 other groups, we know it's academics plus something else. And our interventions have to take that into mind. Okay. Now we're gathering our insights and co-creating our improvement actions. And this is, again, to reiterate, it really pays off to take that extra step to get the student and family input, because they might be able to tell you, that sounds like a great solution, but let me tell you for this reason why it's a no-go, and we got to figure out something else, right? That's the thing that saves us that time and learning from like trying it and then having it not work. It is important to gather insights from multiple teachers, particularly in middle and high school, when kids have multiple teachers they travel through. Not all these teachers might be able to be at every meeting, but we have to have electronic means for them to share insights and information before maybe the students that they come across are being discussed. Because so often each one will know a little bit of the kid's story, and it's only by putting those pieces together that we get that full picture. In some ways, you can also gather this data proactively is through short surveys or student shadowing, where we follow a focal student throughout the school day, or empathy interviews. And this is the idea too, that student success teams can be proactive. They don't have to wait to receive data from somebody else to analyze it. If they think there's a challenge or an issue and they don't have data, they can go out and collect it. And through using means that are not super complicated or hard or time consuming. Just ask all our students 3 or 5 questions. Let's all of us spend half a day over the semester, shadowing focal students that we think we're trying to figure out. Let's do some short empathy interviews during our advisories, if we have them, or during lunch or different times to collect that data. All right. Related to this is really also making sure that we are doing that multiple levels, right? That we have a good offense, right? The best defense in student success is a good offense. Are we really doing those school-wide efforts to build strong relationships? Are we really trying to increase school connectedness and keeping track of it? And then to know that even as we do this, even with the best prevention, some students will still need those customized and tailored supports. And that is part of this work. It's just not the only part of the work that sometimes it's defaulted to in the past. Right? And then finally, as I said, we have to evaluate impact and modify as needed. And really, when you think about it, student success systems and on track or early warning system work, or even MTSS, those are all inherently continuous improvement strategies. But for that to work, we do have to do a few things to make sure that the pieces are in place to do that. So we've got to record the decisions we make in our meetings. And we have to say who's going to champion them. And this is easy to do and easy to overlook, right? Because again, it's that time crunch. But we really need that. So on a regular basis, we can check in and see if the strategy is working. And we can't say it's working or not if we don't know if it hasn't been implemented. And then really to ask ourselves, is it time for a plan B, or should we give it a little more time? But ultimately what we're doing is we're continually modifying our responses until something works. That's the whole critical core fundamental idea. And then on a quarterly basis, we might want to step back, or on a semester basis, and do a deeper analysis to see, well, here's all the students we tried to help in small groups and at the classroom and individual. Here's what we tried. Which things worked when for who, right? Because that's the way really we develop this local knowledge, which is what we really need to understand for our kids, our circumstances, our situations, and for varied needs, whether it be attendance, behavior, course performance, well-being. What are the things that tends to work when kids have these types of situations? We only do that if we reflect upon it on a regular basis and sort of build up our understanding of what's working for who in our circumstances. All right, that was a lot. And really, this is just designed to give you a briefest of introductions to both why we need student success systems, what their core components are, how they're driven by a student success team, and what its core work is. And really now we want to leave you with this idea there's many tools you can use to really help you think about this and reflect upon it and get a deeper understanding. And one of the best is the student success team and reflection action planning tools created by grad partnership partners. And what this is for each of those 4 components, relationships, data, improvement systems, and mindsets, is a series of guiding questions you can ask your team that takes them through the core components of the work of each of those structures. It gives them some look-fors and even some references and tools. And the idea is that every school are doing parts of all of these components. And you're just trying to figure out what's our baseline, what are our current strengths, and where do we need to add more pieces? And really the best way to do is by working through this team reflection set of guiding questions. And then at the end, once you go through the guiding questions, any one of these sections, and we really tell you, like, don't do it all at once, just pick a section where you think you might need some insight and start there. There's some action planning tools that helps you think about what can we do immediately, what's going to take a little bit of time to build capacity, and what's going to take even a little more time because we don't even have consensus yet. You'll also find on the Grad Partnership website, which is a great tool just in itself, a whole series of resources, including some that are designed to meet the challenges of the moment, like a really good chronic absenteeism toolkit. So always going back to that website because there's always things being added. There's things about spotlight schools, so you can see how this work is being done in schools like yours and get ideas from them. So it's a really rich set of resources full of tools you can use. And finally, I just want to end by saying the best way to do this work is to dive in, to get started, to learn as you go, to do it with an open mind and a full heart, but also to know that the best student success system is going to be the one that you and your school creates. This is not about a cookie cutter replication of a model that's been spelled out to the nth degree. It's about taking a core set of principles, practices, and learnings and adapting them to your environment and owning them yourselves and adding great value through your own insight and creativity and wisdom. And doing that, building upon all the successes you've already had in supporting students, and then adding on the pieces that will give you what you need to meet these really elevated challenges in our pandemic impacted world. So we welcome you to the student success system world and are here to help in many, many ways in your journey. And we encourage you to contact us and engage with us in the many ways you can see on the website and elsewhere. so we can all learn and figure this out together. Thank you. Onward and be well.